To me, it was delightful. Honest to goodness village. There were brick walks that the Village Improvement Society built. Then they had oil lamps on the streets. Nearly everybody in town had half to 1 acre of ground. It was just a delightful atmosphere. I still can't get over it. I still say, I'm going to the village. Everyone in Falls Church used to have a front porch. I would love to just sit on my front porch watching the world go by, or just being still.
Hi, Cheryl.
Welcome to Cherry Hill Farm.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Mark Coupard. I'm here on the porch with Shirley Camp at Cherry Hill Farm. And very often we have the front porches that have been around for a long time, but we have a rare treat today as we have someone that would have experienced the front porch in this particular house back in what era? Could you perhaps tell me who you play typically and what groups you're with and what area you're from?
I reenact the part of Mrs. Clover, who was the woman who lived next door to Cherry Hill at the time that we have the house furnished for. It's furnished in the period prior to the Civil War, and the front porch was not on here at that particular time, but it did come on shortly after the Civil War.
When was the house built?
It was built 1845. But at that time, it was just a plain front. It had no porch on it, so it looked very, very much like houses in New York or New England would have looked.
And currently, we look out here and we see today a pretty busy Park Avenue. Do you? How far did the front lawn of this house extend when this porch was first put on? Do you know?
When the porch was first put on, it was farmland all the way to Broad Street, or as we would have called it in our time, the Middle Turnpike. Mm-hmm. And traffic, of course, was almost non-existent at that particular time, so there wasn't all the dust and so forth that you would expect today. You could sit out on the front porch, shell peas, snap beans, do a little darning, watch the children at play, and at the same time enjoy a little bit of outside air.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more private space as opposed to most of the porches we've talked about are fronting the street, and you know, we've talked about how people come up and greet each other and feel sort of invited, whereas you might see them coming from a pretty long way if you were to have a guest.
It really was like an outside room, and they could play a game or do something else on the porch. There wasn't a lot of leisure time at that time, except perhaps Sunday afternoons when no one was supposed to be doing anything anyway, and then they could sit and talk with the visitor that would come by, or read the Bible, or play some very simple game that they might have even played inside too. But otherwise, the front porch itself is just a transition stage from getting from the yard, which would have been fenced at that particular time. There were so many animals that were on the farm, and of course one did not want the animals eating up all of the vegetables that you might have around. There were very few plantings around the house except things that could be eaten like asparagus, that sort of thing.
Well, did they take any meals out here? You mentioned they prepared them.
Actually, I think probably they ate ice cream out here. During the 1869-1870 time frame, there is an inventory that says there was an ice cream freezer at Cherry Hill, and it would have been very apropos to sit on the front porch and crank it until the ice cream actually came, with everybody that was around taking a turn. And then after it came, of course, bowls would have been handed out and people would have had a bowl of ice cream. And
there's no time to waste at that point. You had to eat right where you made it.
Yes,
yeah, that made sense.
Exactly.
But for the most part, there was, again, we focused on kind of leisurely activities of the porch, whereas as you're saying, there really was a lot more work to be done in those days, and I guess people were just a little harder and a little tougher. I was thinking this morning, I was out in my yard, and we've had a bad season in terms of mosquitoes, and was slapping the mosquitoes, and I was thinking about the activities on the porch and how people would have put up with mosquitoes if they wanted to be out on the porch, or were they just hardier then and they just put up with it, or did they have some home remedies to keep the things away?
Well, I think that's one reason why ladies have a fan, is that they can use that to fan away the flies as well as to get a little cool refreshment too. And the gentlemen always carried a rather large handkerchief so they could have waved away any persistent insect. And then too, people did not wear the scents, the perfumes that they do today, so perhaps they just weren't as attractive to the insects as today's person is.
Yeah. Well, now we've got some electric lights out here. If you were to use this on a summer evening, or a spring or a fall evening, or would they have pulled a lantern out to light it, or do you see a lot of evening activities out here?
People probably would sit here in the cool of the evening and not even turn a light on. The Riley family came in the 1870s. Their children grew up here, and there would have been a lot of action for them at that particular time. But by the 1940s, the porch was fast fading from a leisure station to just a pass-through that one went out to the sidewalk and on to work or business or whatever one was going to be doing at that time. Recently, I think people are more likely to sit on the porch and just spend a little time contemplating what's going on around them and becoming immersed in things away from the world. You can sit here and look at a tree or at the lawn, the boxwood, and it just gives you an entirely different perspective on life. Brings a little serenity in.
Yeah, this is probably the best known porch, certainly the best known house in Falls Church, and it was recently painted. It really looks nice. It's been restored very nicely, and it's furnished in as you said, in what's the period? I'm sorry again.
The 1850s, prior to the Civil War.
My kids particularly enjoyed the toys that are in there, and I can see kids were kids then as they are now, and I'm sure they scampered up and down these steps and had a lot of fun out here. I mean, I guess here's some folks coming by right now.
Oh. Hello there.
Hi.
Hello.
Hope you're enjoying Cherry Hill.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Good. Well, we're just having some questions about our porch right here now. What would you do if you had a porch on your house? Or perhaps you do have a porch on your house.
Well, we don't have a porch, but if we had one, I'd sit outside and read.
It sounds like a perfect place to read, and I think that would be a wonderful thing that people have always done. I'm sure they sat here and read from the time the porch was first put on, and each generation had a time to read. It's something they really enjoyed reading. Yeah. One of the famous people that came here, the most famous, I should say, was James Whitcomb Riley. He was the nephew of the Rileys that lived here and cousins to the children. And at the time, he was a very well-known poet. He wrote humorous poetry, but he was favored to read his poetry even in places like Washington, D.C. So he would come on visits to Washington to read his poetry, and then he would come out to Cherry Hill. And so that was their famous person at that particular time. Of course, very few people know about Riley right now, but he does make an interesting read if you enjoy old-fashioned type activities. He worked with the Victorian Society. I'm a member of the Victorian Society and the Friends of Cherry Hill. And so there will be a reenactment after Thanksgiving on the Saturday after the 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, which shows the period during the Civil War. We're reenacting in 1862 Thanksgiving. And then there's other things like Farm Day will be in October. That's October 14th. And that's really great for children to see some of the old-fashioned activities.
All right, well, I look forward to that.
Good.
And thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Nearly every street in Falls Church was arched over with trees. You walked under a bower. That's what made Falls Church so attractive.
Well, Barbara,
Hi, Dave.
how you doing?
Great.
Good. We're having fun under the black oaks.
Yes, we're right here on South Cherry Street at the new Whittier properties, and we're fortunate enough to be standing under trees that survived
Yeah.
all the construction.
Good point.
And to add to the ambiance, we have land clearance and tree removal and chippers. And over here behind us, which you can't see, is we have the paving company is ready to pave the asphalt here. And it's just really gives you a sense of what these trees went through.
Well, it is amazing that they can survive all of this urban environment that's going on. We didn't stage this. Now these trees are what, the 5 black oak specimens?
Yes. The black oak is characterized by a very wide brim. It doesn't have a lot of twiggy, much like other oaks,
Yeah.
pin oaks and white oaks. But you'll see that how wide the branching is. It's very open.
Yeah.
Therefore, you don't see them planted much in the urban environment. They're mostly forest trees.
Well, they're really hard to find.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing some research just before this and found out there's only one nursery in all of Virginia that sells black oak that are balled and burlap and ready to plant.
And they're in Richmond.
Yeah, Waynesboro, I think, Waynesboro Nurseries.
Right.
And so these were planted when the Whittier School was built, so sometime in the 40s, I believe, late 40s.
Right, and just so for these new folks that are new to Falls Church and new to the program, Whittier School was on the site, thus the
Right.
Whittier name.
Yeah, that's right. So we worked real hard to save these trees. These weren't scheduled to be saved. These are specimen trees, but technically, these were supposed to be cut down. And when we worked real hard on saving these, look at that truck going under there right now. He's barely making it. We had to make a pact
Exactly.
to save these and have the homes set back. I was just talking to one of the homeowners who bought it specifically then because of these trees. And but they form half a canopy over the street, I'm sorry. The tree forms half.
Right, and secondly, Dave, they're well balanced. I mean, the canopy is, often you'll see the canopy and it's up on one side and down on the other, and I think they've really achieved a balance here with the branching.
That's right. And they just did something else recently. They just got, not entirely, but mostly rid of the English ivy and the poison ivy that was growing
Yes.
around it.
Yes, I remember
When
that.
you look at the trunk here, you can see all this reddish, hairy stuff from the vines, and that was good because the poison ivy isn't so bad, but the English ivy just kills trees. And I was very happy they got rid of that. And look, there's a wonderful moth right up there. You see that on the, just hidden up there, all well camouflaged.
Well, looking up, Dave, you can also see the deep furrowing that comes on the new branching. It's kind of interesting.
Well, that's unique to the black oak, isn't
Yeah.
it? I don't think the white oaks or
Right,
even the other
exactly.
red oaks have that. Now, Barbara, it's called the black oak. Why is it called black oak?
Because of the darkness of the bark, and when you look up, they really do look black, the branching.
Yeah. Now, I've seen them in the forest, and they're actually darker than they are here
Yes.
out. I don't know if that has, because there's more sunlight here, but in the forest,
Well, perhaps
they're
the
really
ivy,
dark.
which just as recently
That's
been
right.
taken off,
That's right.
may have contributed to that.
Because they just took this off like a month ago.
Exactly. And,
Okay.
And don't you, also, I think we talked about this, that the tree has several other names like yellow oak, Dyer's oak, and
Now, wait a minute. So black oak and yellow. How can it be black and yellow? What's this black
Well,
and
they
yellow
use
stuff?
the inner part, when you take the bark off, the inner bark is actually a yellow. It's very bright yellow,
okay.
and they use that in dyeing, and they say in places that are in the backwoods and Appalachia and other areas, they still use it for dye. It's very strong, natural yellow.
Now, you said Dyer's oak, so it was like
Dyer oak.
so it was called Dyer oak and yellow oak. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
And I understand also the tan bark, we use the tan bark in mulch. People like the light color.
Wait a minute, tan bark, that's the name, one of the names is
Yes,
tan
of
bark
the tree
oak?
is a tan bark oak.
Okay, so it's got black oak, yellow oak, Dyer's oak, tan bark oak, all the same tree.
Right, it's all the same tree.
So
I
it's
guess
got a
so-
lot of tannin in that they
Exactly.
use for, what do they use the tannin for? Like leather?
Yes.
Okay. That'd bring us some yellow leather, wouldn't it, I guess, with the yellow? Yeah, that's interesting. These leaves are kind of interesting here.
Yeah, they're rather large. They look almost like a pin oak leaf, except they're so much bigger.
Well, this is another confusing part, because if they're pointed like this, that means they're of the red oak family.
Exactly.
But this is a black oak that's also
Right.
called yellow oak. I mean, we got almost the whole spectrum of colors here in this
Right.
one tree, you
Right.
know. And so you said it gets mixed up with, I'd mix this up with the pin oak.
Exactly. It is just a much larger leaf, though. It looks
Yeah.
like it's at least another half again bigger.
Okay.
And secondly, I'm sure the autumn color is
Okay.
very similar to the pin. As people know, pin oak keeps its leaves practically all through the winter, and you're raking them halfway through
Right.
the spring.
Right. Yeah. Now these acorns, these are very small.
Flat. They look like somebody bit the end off of
Yeah.
them.
Right. And they now the black oaks of all and in the red oak family, they set them, I understand, every 2 years. I mean, it's as opposed to the white oak, which you get acorns every year. You only get acorns every 2 years off this.
Right.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of people know this, but when a tree is under a lot of stress from drought, they'll produce more acorns, and part of that reason is for the continuing of the species, and you'll notice
okay.
that with a lot of trees.
Well, this should be putting out a lot of acorns then, because I mean it was highly stressed by the construction. Even though they had tree fencing, I've drove by here a number of times, and big equipment was driving right over the roots.
Exactly.
And then the contractor came in and pruned back. So after compressing the roots, then they pruned back further. So that's going to be under a lot of stress. Good thing we have a lot of water this year.
Yes, very much so. You can see some twig die back here, and
Yeah.
I hope that the trees, once we get some of these winds that come with our hurricane season, where we get the storms that come with the thunderstorms, a lot of these twigs will drop, and it's natural pruning that occurs.
Now, this is right down at the end down here by the stoplight is Hillwood that crosses.
Yes,
and
sir.
Hillwood is one of the streets that's going to be used in the Neighborhood Tree Project. There's a pilot program to plant trees. And
Right.
this is kind of what I understand they want.
Exactly.
They want to develop trees that are going to have a nice canopy over the street, gives the shade. So this is one example, this side, not the other side, but
Right.
this side of the street is one example of what the Neighborhood Trees program is trying to recreate.
Exactly, and as they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So at least
Yeah.
we're starting, and maybe the children will appreciate it when they buy their homes on this street,
Right.
much like the people who did here, because I'm sure they appreciate the trees and the setback that occurs. It's just a wonderful ambiance, I think.
So if anybody wants a black oak that looks like this, and they go to their own retailer, maybe Greenscape, for example, and ask for a black oak, it's probably good that they're informed, because actually most retailers will not carry a black oak.
Exactly.
And you can say, tell them to order their black oak from Waynesboro Nursery in
Right.
Waynesboro, Virginia.
Right.
And not pushing them, except they're the only ones who do it.
Yes, exactly.
And
Unless you want to plant the acorn and see
I
what
did
happens.
plan to come over and pick up the many acorns on South Cherry Street between Rolling Trace and Hillwood.
Exactly.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for showing me these black oaks. These
As
are great.
always, I enjoy it. Thank
Great.
you.
Uncle George used to take me down to Mankin's Notions and Dry Goods, a corner store at Broad in Washington, where the office building is now. She always had candy, which was something we couldn't have at home. It was a great treat for me to go to Mrs. Mankin's store and have those marvelous penny candies. Uncle George used to carry me down to the store and get them for me. Mother didn't approve, but he did it just the same. I enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Mike Diener, and we're at another gathering spot here in Falls Church. Can you tell where we are? Let's follow the cowboy and see where it leads us. Hi,
Hi, Mike.
I'm Mike Diener. Your name?
Paul Puckett.
Hey, Paul. There's a cowboy outside that
Yeah,
led me this direction. Can you tell us where we're at today?
This is Dixie Sheet Metal Works at 111 Gordon Road, Falls Church, Virginia. And that's our tin man, Mr. Dixie.
Mr. Dixie.
Yeah,
Great name.
He was made in 1962.
And he's on some Library of Congress?
That's the Library of Congress. Came out and did an article on him. It was in the Post a few years back. And the Post did an article this a couple weeks ago and was in last Friday's Post about the unusual things around the Washington area, and our Tin Man was in that.
In the weekend section.
The
That's
weekend section on Friday, right?
the one site in Falls Church that they mentioned.
Right.
And there he is.
And his number 16 site on the map. It shows it Falls Church.
And what makes him so special?
He's kind of the giant Tin Man that people have seen over the years. He kind of watches over Dixie sheet metal. This is a sculpture man we did some work for, Mr. Calfee. Up in Rockville, there's a big brass sculpture that he had the plans to, and we did, and it's setting up at the rec center in Rockville. We did a kiosk like this for someone close here in Falls Church out of brass, and be nice if we made a whole bundle of them for people around here in Falls Church.
Right in Falls Church, that would look gorgeous.
Right. And this is a fountain for Jimmy Lou Mason, a sculptor. She lives in Maryland, and this is up at Columbia Mall.
Up at Columbia Mall, that's right. And that's wow. So how did you develop that? You got water flowing through
water
that?
flowing through it, and it's got the mouth of it real small, and it shoots it out in a flat stream. It comes out of the mouth of the sculpture, and it's real neat. It's up at the Columbia Mall, and in a hood. It's over in Potomac, Maryland, and we made for this.
Well, that's great. So now how long have you been in the city of Falls Church?
Since 1947.
And how long have you been a chamber member? Falls Church chamber member.
I guess that long too, since 1947 or 50 or somewhere around there. That man started it in 45, John H. Hours. And Bob Cook sitting here used to work for us, and he's a painter, so he's painting of this.
Good work, Bob. Nice to meet you.
City of Falls Church train station and the City of Falls Church rec center. And so you want to go outside and see
let's see
some
the
more
operation.
This way, Mike, and we'll go back and show you some of the articles.
This is some operation.
Thanks, yeah.
So what are these guys?
They're making panels for some customer. It's a 10-foot brake, 60 tons and stuff like that. And we can
What
do
would
up
that
to
be
10.
used for?
Making fans and panels. This is for ceiling panels for a high school over in Potomac, Maryland, Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
Okay, Mike, let's go back and see some of the things in the back. Make.
This is where the fun stuff gets made?
This is where the fun stuff gets made.
So how old is Dixie Cowboy?
He was made in 62.
Whoa.
1962, he was in the Falls Church parade, Memorial Day parade that year. He was on a little trailer behind a truck, pulling him down the parade route.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. Like, this is some of the stuff we make. This is a rotisserie chicken cooker we make for restaurants, and they cook 25 chickens at a time on them, and charcoal.
So where's this one going?
This goes to Herndon. Two of them go up to Herndon, and there's one goes down in Arlington, and one goes over Maryland. Mike, let me show you some of the other things we make here.
You making a boat here or something?
Eric, what is this anyway? It's a roof. It's a what?
A light fixture.
A light fixture. Yeah, it's we
really
did these beams, cut
That's
out
pretty
for
solid.
so they fit on
Which
there.
What kind of metal is this?
That's aluminum. Yeah, and so it's a light fixture, right?
Yep.
So where's it go at? Museum or someplace like that? No, I don't say, but.
How long does it take to make one of these?
I don't. It was probably a day on that one day, maybe 8 hours or something. About a day so far. We're up to here now. Yeah.
So everything. It seems like everything you do is almost new and custom built.
It's custom made. Yeah.
Oh, that's
And here's
great.
something we got. We got a computer.
You got computers here? Here?
Yeah, we cut out shapes and forms. See that silhouette? We made a bunch of those for a company over in Maryland. And now John's going to make you a present.
You can make me something?
Yeah.
That fast?
He'll show you kind of how he puts this thing in the computer and programs it in. See? And John has it here, and
All
this is
right.
something you can remember Dixie Sheet Metal by.
That's right. You even spelled my name right. Outstanding.
Good, good.
Wow.
good.
So now, if I wanted to start hanging out here, what would, you know, it's a good gathering spot. What would could we make cool things or?
Oh yeah, any shapes you want. John cuts those things out like for the gas company. Little pedal looks like a what are they, John? Look like a lollipop, Don. Blank off plates for the gas company. And we do any shape you want to on the computer. You know, he can program in your name, and it's just it's
Every
wonderful
day?
too. We use it for making ductwork. You know, if you want a squared around fitting or an elbow, John cuts it out on there and then takes it up and rolls it up and weld it together. Yeah,
This is excellent.
yeah. So it's a fun place to work.
Well, now that I found out his name, Dixie Cowboy, we had a great time and I got a new friend. Come on down to Dixie Sheet Metal.
I loved going to the village. Everybody knew everybody. I would say, "Hello, Mrs. Brown," or "Hello, Mr. Hawkshurst," and they would all know me and my kin.
Well, we're here today with one of Falls Church's most familiar faces, Mr. Hap Day. Welcome, Mr. Day.
How do you do, sir? It's a great pleasure.
It is. This is fun.
You and I have crossed swords many times, sir.
Oh, I thought it was crossing paths.
Oh, is that what
With
it
a
was?
handshake.
Oh, all right.
That's great.
I'll keep an open mind.
Well, a lot of people know you. A lot of people know your face, know your name, say hello to you all over the place. But a lot of people don't know much about Hap Day.
Oh.
Tell us, when did you first come to Falls Church?
Well, I was transferred here from the CNC Hawaii Pacific in 1960 to the Pentagon. And I spent 2 years in the Pentagon. I was in the, what they call flag plot, where I was briefing CNO, Arleigh Burke, and so on. And my wife and I, the 4 children, had really decided that we'd found a permanent place to settle. We'd been traveling all over. And we had the 4 children in the school system, Fairfax County. And I had moved my church letter from my home outside of Pittsburgh to the Falls Church Presbyterian. The first time I'd ever done that. And so we were community oriented more and more, and we wanted to become more involved, particularly for the children's sake. And frankly, the Navy pay wasn't all that good. So I thought, boy, I got to raise 4 kids, get them into college, something's got to change. So primarily for economic reasons, but also social. I put in my resignation after 24 years in the Navy and retired as a commander. Now, that turned out to be a very interesting change because I went into the life insurance business. And people said, well, that's silly. And I said, no, I've been selling the Navy all my life. I loved it, loved every day I was in the Navy, loved having command of a submarine, loved having command of 2 destroyers, loved running around the Soviet Union for 2.5 years. But now I was ready to try a new career. So for the next almost 30 years, I was in the life insurance business. And that's what really got me into Falls Church, the city. We live in Falls Hill along with Dr. Pace and, of course, Barbara Gordon and the city attorney.
Right, Roy Thorpe.
Roy Thorpe lives just on the back side of Falls Hill. So
Now, Falls Hill is if you're going up by Don Beyer Volvo and the George Mason School on the south side of Broad Street there, Route 7, going up the hill is where
back of
Falls
Sam's Market.
Back of Sam's Market.
Yeah.
Yeah. On one side is Shreve Road and the other side is Broad Street on the
Yeah, it
perpendicular.
goes right up over the hill and down. very delightful community, and shortly after I got out of the Navy and got involved with the community, I became president, which is typical.
Right. Anybody who steps backward last is
Yeah.
the president.
I've been president of everything I've ever belonged to, so it's kind of a...
You got to learn to step backward
Oh, good
faster.
Lord, no. Anyway, the fellow that I was working with in the office said to me, you know, you've got to join the Chamber of Commerce, get business contacts. So I said, well, that's fine. And he said, get on the membership committee. They'll always want people on the membership committee. And then you get to know the new members, you know, before anybody else. I said, well, that's a nice idea. So I did. Latter part of '62, I joined the Falls Church Chamber of Commerce.
Smart move.
And about a year later, my mentor said to me, how are you and the chamber getting along? Oh, I said, I'm the president. He said, oh, good heavens, he said. I said, membership committee, you know, not the president. But anyway, I did become the president and wound up, a couple of years later, they honored me with the first pillar of the Community Award, which was a great honor, and I was really delighted to get that. Now, I kept my membership up until, well, actually, till today. Keep in mind the 14 years that I was president and CEO, I was not a dues-paying member, but of course I was a member of the chamber. But while I was the president, I got very deeply involved in streetscape.
Yes.
So that was not an easy job, really, because the problem so often in Falls Church is the business is on one side, citizens are on the other, and there's nobody in the middle.
Right.
And I found myself in the middle. As a result of that, I got the Businessman of the Year award.
Good.
For the reconciliation, and finally...
Well, generally being in the middle means both sides
don't
think
like
you're
me.
on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember that some years ago. I was the district chairman of the Republican Party in Providence District. And part of that, of course, is you have to be on the committee of the county. And for some reason or other, the conservatives decided I belonged to them. And the others that I belonged to them. And so they each put out a slate. And I was on both of them.
That's great.
Well, it was. But the next year, of course, the conservatives didn't like me anymore. So, fie on them. But anyway, that was a memorable run. I really enjoyed it. And actually got Tom Davis started in the business.
Wow.
To which he will attest as frequently as I see him, which is nice. We're good friends. But anyway, working with the city, of course, those 14 years covered a great deal of territory.
Well, my wife was with the recycling, you know, worked on the recycling, thinks of you as one of her great leaders, mentors, because she came to you right when she started, said, now who do I talk to and how do I go about this? And she was very grateful for all the help that you have given her over the last 12 years on getting this nationally award-winning recycling program.
Well, of course, you're married to a very wonderful woman.
That's
I know
true.
You realize
That's
that,
true.
Not only talented, but just truly a great human being. But I was on the recycling committee, on the Business Development Commission for almost all of its existence. And then when they dissolved that, brought in economic development, of course, I stayed on there working with the Mayor's Committee to keep an eye on that group as it formed and bumped and traveled along the road to its present site, where now apparently it's about to get a windfall of $1.5 million. So, you know, they've done pretty well.
Well, Hap, you've been the center of the brouhahas and every battle, every discussion we've ever had in Falls Church, and that's what's wonderful about Falls Church, that there are so many people like you, many people having a diversity of opinions that lead the charge and make this an exciting place to be. And that is one of the major draws of Falls Church. That is very exciting with all the discussions. But now you've moved on to another area. So you've retired so many times in your life. You've retired again and from the chamber, and you're moving on to something else. That's why we're here at WFAX.
I consider myself a professional retiree.
That's great.
Retired from the Navy, retired from the insurance business, and then from the Chamber of Commerce work. But Doris Newcomb, who's a dear friend, and I have been together now for quite a while because Nick Benton and I, before I retired, of course, I think going back almost 10 years now, have had a radio program here. And she asked me if I would do a local, much the same as you're doing, you see.
Right.
And you've been my guest a couple of times, and it's delightful. So it gives an opportunity to interview people of note, people who have interesting careers, and in every sense duplicates what you're doing, but on the radio for 15 minutes. And we put that on at 8:45 on Saturday evening. So
Saturday evening, 8:45 on WFAX 1220.
Right. And then, of course, on Monday evening, Nick and I have the half-hour TV show on 38 when they're up.
Yes. No, it's
Which
wonderful.
Is not always.
It's not Cable 38's fault.
That's
It's not Cable
say.
38's fault.
Yeah. Well, anyway, with some exceptions, we serve as the warm-up for either the City Council or the following week for the Planning Commission.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun, and really that, along with a lot of writing, and of course, as I said, I've been president of everything I ever joined. I've also been the secretary of my Naval Academy class for almost 55 years. So I have writing to do in connection with that.
You're still with, is it Kiwanis?
Oh yeah, I'm president of Kiwanis. Oh,
Okay, yeah, of course.
And why ask?
And you're in something else too. You're in some other organization, aren't you?
Well, I'm the treasurer of the American Society of Financial Advisors and
I need
Professionals.
to talk to you after we shoot this then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have 2 degrees, master's degrees in management and financial planning. And I also have been the almost permanent secretary of the Naval Academy Alumni Chapter here. And that goes back for almost 30 years, I guess.
Well, Mr. Day, you're truly an icon, let alone a familiar face of Falls Church.
Well.
And we owe a lot to you for doing what you have been doing for so many years and are continuing to do, and look forward to hearing you on WFAX 1220, 8:45 on what night?
Saturday.
Saturday night.
Right.
Hap day. Thank you.
I heard music everywhere in town. A lot of folks had pianos and other instruments in their homes, and I could just walk up and down the street and hear people playing pianos and violins and singing. Some fellas were always sitting on the front steps of the stores down by the crossroads playing harmonica. Of course, there was music at church on Sundays and Wednesdays. A band always played at town picnics. One of my favorite things was dances at the Oddfellows Hall.
I could just let you keep playing. All right. I'm Jim Edmonds from Fox's Music, and you know, there really is music everywhere here in Falls Church City. You know, we're very fortunate, and today we're very fortunate because we're visiting with a luthier, Steve Ripley. How you doing, buddy?
Jim,
good to see you.
You bet.
Yeah. Steve, I know what you do, but tell us what a luthier is, and what do you do?
Well, a luthier is a person who builds and repairs stringed instruments. Mm-hmm. I specifically concentrate on guitars primarily, guitars, mandolins, banjos. I've done some work on violins and cellos and basses, but primarily guitar work.
I'm fortunate enough to know Steve because he's doing most of the repair work for Fox's Music Company, and I asked him if he'd meet with us today and tell us how he got into the business, tell us about some of the repair jobs he's done, tell us any anecdotes he's got. You were telling me one off camera earlier about an elderly woman who called you in to check out a couple guitars, a couple basses.
Oh, a friend of mine actually was playing an embassy gig a few years back, and a woman came up to him after the gig, said that her husband had died a few years back, and was he interested in getting his string bass that she had in the garage. He brought it over to me to be repaired, solid wood, European-made, 150-year-old stand-up bass, worth a year's salary.
Right.
You see that sort of stuff occasionally. I don't see too much of it, but...
Well, I know we've occasionally called on you to give us a rough estimate. I mean, a lot of people who have their guitars, their violins for that matter, they're of course they're concerned about how much they've appreciated and what have you. A lot of times it's very disappointing. But I know we've had a couple Martins come in here that have been kind of a surprise. Tell us about your repair work. Tell us some of the things you do.
Well, it's a pretty broad range of stuff. It's basically checking the action height on the neck, checking the condition of the frets, checking the instrument itself for physical damage, cracks in the top, cracks in the bridge block, checking to see the machine heads are lubricated and in good condition, adjusting the truss rod in the neck if it has a truss rod. This guitar doesn't happen to. Anywhere from those simple things to guitars I've gotten from airport damage in a box this big, and somebody says, "Can you please put it back together again?" It's always interesting and it's always different.
Well, I know we stake our reputation on the work you do, and we've always been pleased. I'm not trying to make a commercial out of this, but one of the things is that we rely on you is we'll get in a batch of guitars. I know recently we got some from a country I don't want to mention, but all of the I believe all the frets were loosening up or something.
They had, yeah, I remember that episode. A number of frets loosening, and more of a problem was a severe hump. This should be a relatively straight line all the way through, and if you don't build a guitar correctly, when you glue this section together, the neck and the body, you wind up with a thing that's not straight, and they don't play.
Yeah. Well, talking about building, what do you got back there? I think you got something you want to show us.
This is just a little oddball.
Here, let me take this.
Not your standard steel string guitar, mostly built for stage appearance. I built back in 1984.
Excuse me for laughing, but it's not your standard guitar.
No, it's not. It's not at all.
Can you give us a couple licks?
Yeah, it's actually more of an electric assisted guitar, but. And it's horribly out of tune. But
Steve, this is the first time I've noticed this. But how is this to bracket it or to brace it? What is that?
Actually, the neck on this guitar is one piece. I don't know if the camera can see the lines right here or not. But the neck, this block is all part of the neck. And I did it mostly because the body's so thin here, there's very little structural support for all the pressure that a guitar neck, the strings exert on a guitar neck. So I needed something solid in there to give it some stability.
Right. And where did you get the materials for this?
Some of the materials in this guitar, actually most of the materials in this guitar came from a fellow by the name of Joseph Wallow, who you are, I believe, familiar with. He was a well-known repairman, violin repairman in the area, did a lot of the symphony orchestra instruments over the years, and he also built guitars. Went out of business a number of years ago, but I met him about 15 years ago looking for longer than normal spruce. Normal guitar top is obviously more like this guitar I was playing a moment ago. This is excessively long, and no one had it. And I wandered into his shop and asked him if he had any long pieces of spruce. And after berating me for being a long-haired musician and a guitar player and all the things that he didn't like about modern music, he brought this German spruce out from the back, and also a piece of Honduras mahogany book matched on the back. The sides used to be my Uncle Charlie's kitchen cabinets in his house on Rosemary Lane, so they went to a good use.
Wow.
And the neck block, I believe, yeah, the neck and the machine heads I bought from Joseph as well. A good man, retired now.
Well, I know we're really happy to have you as our luthier, our repair person at Fox's Music, and I know we've had an awful lot of people are very satisfied. How do our viewers, how do our customers get in touch with you? I mean, how do you make a buck out of this?
How do I make a buck out of this? The best way, given the situation, is bring them here, bring them to Fox's. I have a fairly large customer base of people I've been dealing with for years, mostly through word of mouth, since '82 when I came back here. But primarily that's the simplest thing for somebody, if they're listening, to do, is just bring them here to your store.
Yeah, well, I knew that, and thanks very much for that little pitch. Steve, I know you're a great musician, and I'm kind of wondering how you got into being a luthier. Didn't you play in a group at one time?
Yeah, I did. I played in a lot of bands in the late 60s through the 70s. No one else was doing it, and things were breaking. And when you're out on the road and things are breaking, somebody's got to fix them. So it was sort of just necessity being the mother of invention, primarily. I got into it slowly and realized I had a bit of a talent for it. And I lived out on the West Coast for a number of years, and I apprenticed to some boat builders, which is where I really learned a lot of the woodwork that goes into this sort of work.
That's
was from
amazing.
guys that really know woodwork, English boat builders. And it's just been an evolving thing. Unfortunately, the musical career sort of took the back seat to the repair career. There's a lot more regular money in fixing them, it seems, than there is in playing them anymore.
Can you give us another few licks?
Sure, on the other guitar here. I hate to...
I see that's a Martin. Now,
Yes, it is.
Is that a particularly old one?
It's a 1944 D18.
Wow.
The inlay is not original, so it's probably worthless on the market, but other than that.
All right, here we go. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, Steve.
Sometimes I would walk to and from the village along the roads, but I loved to walk the trails and alleys behind houses, through fields and woods. It just seemed more special.
Back in the 1880s, James Whitcomb Riley was one of the most famous poets from the United States. He was known as the nature poet. And one of his most famous poems was called Out to Old Aunt Mary's. Let me read you the first stanza. Wasn't it pleasant, O brother mine, in those old days of the lost sunshine, of youth when the Saturday's chores were through, and the Sunday's wood in the kitchen too, and we went visiting, me and you, out to old Aunt Mary's. James Whitcomb Riley's Aunt Mary was Mary Riley, who lived in Cherry Hill Farmhouse, that's still in the city of Falls Church on Park Avenue, around 300 Park Avenue. I'm standing here on Park Avenue, where Virginia Avenue comes in, right across from the Mary Riley Stiles Library, and we're here at the Historic Trail Information Kiosk that was put up a couple of years ago. And we're at the beginning of a trail we call Riley Trail that goes through Cherry Hill Park. We're going to take one of the trail guides of the historic trail that's throughout Falls Church that was printed a number of years ago. From the kiosk on Park Avenue by the Mary Riley Stiles Library, I'm walking up the Riley Trail. Starts as a dirt path right at the White Pine Forest here. This was planted in 1928 by Joseph Harvey Riley. It replaced a apple orchard that was aging and he had to take down. And
planted these beautiful pine trees. They're very tiny, and they've now grown into towering giants. My daughter used to call this the Jumanji Forest after the children's book and the movie. But this is the beginning of the Riley Trail, and let's look and see what we can find as we walk along this trail. This is the last grove of trees in Falls Church. It's a pure grove, planted of the same kind of tree in rows. And it gives a very humbling sense, much like the feeling you can get in the redwoods of California, just being amongst these giants and looking up at them and walking through them. And this is the beginning of the Riley Trail. It's a wonderful place. Wish we had more places like them. As we walk up the trail and past the barn that's on our right, that's an antebellum barn. That means built before the Civil War. It's the last one of its kind that's still in existence within the Beltway in Northern Virginia. I want to show you a book called Cherry Hill Farm that you can still get in the library, local library. It was printed in 1971. And on page 49, it has a wonderful picture of what the farm used to be like and where all the crops were. And standing right here by the barn gives us a good place, a reference point, because the barn is in the picture. Right here was the old vegetable farm, primarily, and also having strawberries. And back of us, of course, was where the apple orchard was. And just toward the barn, there was an arbor of white grapes. Now this was all called Old Virginia Avenue right here. This is actually a dirt road, the trail we're on right now, and it's the extension of Virginia Avenue. So believe it or not, we're walking on a former farm road. And the playground that's right here by the barn is very popular, and especially when we have the summer concerts in the park. This place is really teeming with kids and running all over the place, and their parents running after them. Let's walk up the old country road we now call the Riley Trail and see what we can find. As we go past the playground, we're going to a big tulip tree and have a beautiful red bud here and cherry trees. And when you get up to the big old double-liter red maple that's right here on the left, it's time to look out on the right to the field. Just beyond where the hayfield was, they grew plum and pear trees. They had an orchard there, and just on the other side of that was an old peach orchard. Now, legend had it that there was a Civil War battle there, but more recent investigations have indicated that the peach orchard of the Civil War battlefield was way over by Seven Corners, but still a nice legend here. But there definitely was a peach orchard right there. So just imagine all the fruit tree orchards right around here. So let's head into the next section of the Riley Trail, back into the shade of the big tulip trees. And we'll head up this hill. It's been called many things. Originally, this was called Poverty Pines. There were these old Virginia pines in here. Those were called Poverty Pines, and the members of the Riley family built the what we now call the Senior Center or the Gage House, but they call it Poverty Pines. Yeah, you begin to really feel like you're in the woods back here. In fact, here's a tree right in front of me. You look up about 15 feet, and you see a great hole in the tree. That's a couple of them that are woodpecker holes. You don't see that too often in the city. We're entering the part of the forest or trail that's my favorite part, and it's grown up on both sides, and even with some of the potentially irritating sounds of the city in back of us and development, you really can get a feel of the woods in here and what it may have been like at certain times. We're heading up Sledding Hill here, and this is where kids really hang out a lot in the winter. And there's just one spot up here, and you can't really tell too much in the middle of the summer where that is, except there's one trail that goes down. This is one of the few places in town where kids can freely sled in the winter without worrying about fences or cars hitting them or anything like that. And it's just clear shot all the way down, as long as they don't hit a tree, of course. Oh, here's something I love to see in the trail. It's a dead log across. It makes you really begin to feel like you're back in the woods. It's amazing how many people take this one trail when they could just walk across the lawn down there, just not too many feet away. And but they love to. We all love to walk on these dirt trails with logs across the road. When you're walking through a trail like this, always want to be looking up at times to see the sky through the canopy. Especially when you really watch the clouds moving. And one of probably the least appreciated life forms, the fungus, you'll see around, and they change throughout the year. And these are kind of dull looking right now, but sometimes you find them in wild orange and yellows, and there's different colors. And the fact that the city has chosen on purpose to leave some dead and dying trunks along the ground is really to the city's credit, to allow this form of life to continue and do its work. It's part of the whole ecosystem that improves the soil and the air and everything. So it's interesting to watch. It changes throughout the whole season. Going down to the final leg of the trail, heading out of the park toward Great Falls Street. And this is a wonderful trail, one of my favorites in town. And when I get to the end of the trail, I kind of feel like turning around and walking back up again. And I really recommend you come in May, especially when the May apples are up. They're not up now, but they're all over the place in May. As you make the turn onto the brick sidewalk at Cherry Hill Park by Great Falls, you can take a little stroll along the sidewalk toward the Senior Center, Gage House, and sit on the front porch and imagine what this place was like 100 years ago.
One of the most interesting things to me is that right in the middle of Falls Church, right in the middle of one of the fastest urbanizing areas anywhere, we have magnificent old houses and trees, beautiful music still in homes and on the streets, marvelous places to gather, and trails to return home on. It makes me wonder why these wonderful qualities of village life remain here in Falls Church.